Welcome to the show, everyone. We've got David Avocado Wolf back. I'm so excited. If you are on the podcast, we did a video. So come on over to jjflazanes.tv to check out David and I. We're going to talk about superfoods today. And if you're finding us on YouTube because you're searching for David, just know this is my show. So what does that mean? I'm going to talk. And if you don't like me, totally cool. If you don't like me and you want more of just David, where can they find more of just you, sir?
You can find me. You can track me down on probably just davidwolf.com. That's the easiest portal.
Perfect. davidwolf.com. Don't like me? Go right there. Otherwise, buckle up. Here we go. We're going to be talking today about superfoods. When I met David for the first time, well, we've only met in person once. It was 2007 at a wellness event called Extreme Health, put on by T. Harv Eker and Peak Potentials at the time. It was his first time doing it. And we didn't share the stage, but I was speaking at that event also. And you were talking about superfoods. And I remember back then in 2007, superfoods was a hot topic, and it still is today, but I almost feel like there's so much behind it that's like, it's gigantic. So I'd love to break down maybe an overview, like a simplification of the term, and then maybe different categories we could go into, and then where you'd like to go, you know what I mean? Because again, this is a ginormous topic, and 1 hour is not going to scratch the surface of superfoods. So how would you start us? And welcome back to the show, David.
Right on. Thanks for having me back. Good to see you. Okay, so superfoods are the greatest plant foods that have been identified by civilizations long before television and automobiles, when people were much closer to nature and they really knew about their environment. And so each civilization appears to have selected one or two of their plants as being like the superfood of their civilization. When we think of the great civilizations of Mexico, for example, their superfood was cacao, or chocolate, the chocolate nut, the nut that all chocolate is made out of. When we think of the great civilizations of China, theirs was the goji berry. And it was the center, actually. In fact, what was his name? Linnaeus, the guy who categorized all the plants and created the binomial system that we're all familiar with. He named the goji berry, he put it in the genus Lyceum, which has to do with teaching, education, because that's how the Chinese really thought about it. It's like, once you have that one in the center of your diet, in the center of your medicine wheel, then it teaches you about all the other medicines. I thought that was a really interesting insight. Linnaeus, these people were really sharp way back then. And then we could go to any part of the world. Let's go to South Africa. Aloe vera was what they had in South Africa. And that was their great superfood. And still today, one of the great beauty substances and great beauty foods and great longevity substances. And you can tell I'm a massive fan of aloe vera, like over the top. When you get to the Caucasus in that region, it was hemp seed. And that was their superfood and their super crop that they could grow and create an enormous amount of food and other materials for building and everything else. And it was like the center of their medicine wheel. And we could just go anywhere in the world and we can find a superfood that was the thing that civilization was into. And what I like about superfoods is it also kind of brings you back to that. So for example, another superfood of the great civilizations of Mexico was spirulina. And spirulina was grown in Lake Tenochtitlan. So we don't know this, but the greatest engineering project of the 1700s was when they drained out the Great Valley of Mexico City. So Mexico City is a huge volcanic valley. It's probably really 50 cities, kind of all that have now sprawled into each other. And it used to be filled with water, and it was like a Venice. So when Cortez got there in 1519, I think, somewhere around there, 1520, he was like, this is like Venice. Everything was all canals and water. And what they were growing in that water was spirulina. And they were floating gardens of spirulina, really interesting accounts. And I really recommend going back. I'm going to see if I can recall this. There's Prescott, The Conquest of Mexico. That book, if you can get the English translation, which is Prescott's famous work on the invasion of Mexico, one of the most incredible pieces of literature in history, I think. And he talks about the spirulina farms on the Lake of Mexico. And, I could go on and on about this. There's just so many interesting ones. If you go to the Pacific Northwest of the American continent, the North American continent, you could think of the blue-green algae that grows in the lakes of the Pacific Northwest, of which one was isolated AFA blue-green algae, which is a very popular superfood all over the world, and a wild food. And that's something, too, that we can get into. Some of these are wild foods, and that means they're not for everybody because they're strong, right? Wild food, if you go out and eat a wild dandelion, people are going to be like, I'd rather have lettuce. Most people, not everybody.
Well, can we just say that superfoods are basically a nutrient dense substance, but they all have different properties, or are they all detoxifiers?
Great question. So So the next phase of it is, okay, so they selected them based on, this incredible cornucopia of medicinal properties, but a superfood is kind of like a food and a medicine together. So they have both properties. So they're very nutritious, but they're also very medicinal. So for example, let's just take the goji berry. The goji berry is really interesting because its magical properties, it has very unusual polysaccharides. What's that mean? Those are long chain sugars. So glucose and fructose are short chain sugars. And we kind of know what that is when they're sweet to the taste. But as you get longer and longer and longer, you're going to get more bitter and you're going to get different flavors or no flavor. But you're going to get good medicine. You're going to get good food for the immune system. So the immune system, especially white blood cells, like to take the polysaccharides in and convert them into immunological weaponry. And that's why polysaccharides are considered one of the best foods for the immune system. And goji berry is one of those. Another one, by the way, that I mentioned before is aloe vera. It's another one that has a very high amount of polysaccharides, which are very immunological, very good for the immune system. And so when you combine the food and medicine together, that's what a superfood is. And that's why, like, especially for the demographic of like, say 20 to 50, you really got to be doing a smoothie every day, just one blended drink with superfoods in it. And that beats vitamins and mineral pills every day of the week. Every day of the week.
I hesitate to ask what are the ingredients in said smoothie and which ones and rotating them. So if it's funny because I know the properties of goji and aloe vera being immune system boosting, goji especially, right? So, but you mentioned aloe vera for immune system, and I didn't even really think of that because for spirulina or let's say chlorella, I don't know if that's considered a superfood, that would be, or the antioxidant compounds in cacao, that being again immune boosting. So I was looking at like when someone's looking for a superfood, going into why am I going to eat this? It's good for me. What does it do? How much do I need? How many of them do I need? How often do I need them? Which ones in what order?
Good question. So this is really kind of a cool thing I've learned in the history of my discoveries in nutrition and my journey, and it's really, I find it fascinating. You could survive without antioxidants. You could survive without the transformed anthocyanins, which are really become protectors of the cell membrane. And you've heard of Bruce Lipton. Obviously, you've interviewed him, and so you know how he talks about the intelligence of the cell membrane. Well, the cell membrane can be nourished with antioxidants. It can be nourished with carotenoids and anthocyanins and all these interesting things that are in superfoods, even chocolate with the cacao bean. But you could survive either way. But which one do you want? Do you want to have a cell that's kind of hollow and doesn't have the real richness of the antioxidants that could be in that cell membrane, the richness of the polysaccharides that could be in that cell membrane, the richness of the omega-3 fatty acids that could be in that cell membrane, or without it? And that's the thing, is that eventually you start realizing that these superfoods they're correlated to a richness of culture, life, and your own experience. And so having come from the SAD diet, I think we all come from and I ate just junk when I was a little kid. It was like, we didn't have anything healthy or organic, anything like that. So I've experienced that side, and that's why I'm on this side. Is because I'd rather get the antioxidants and the polysaccharides and the saponins and all these interesting compounds that superfoods provide than not. Now, does that give you a health benefit? Does it give you a longevity benefit? Sure, yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you think about chocolate, now I'm not talking about like junk chocolate with sugar in it, but the original material, and also processed really high content, say high 90% cacao or something like that. This is the highest antioxidant food in the world that people eat. There could be things with higher antioxidants, but people don't eat it. In terms of a food that is in the top 15 foods in the world, chocolate's it. And so do chocolate eaters live longer? And the answer is absolutely. Princeton correlated that long ago. Chocolate eaters live on average a year to 2 years longer than the average. Now you might be going, hey, that's insignificant, but hey, when you got grandkids, it's very significant, right? Or great grandkids. And that's a lot for a food. To be able to say that one food in your diet can increase your longevity by that much, that's a significant thing, right? If we think about that, we're like, okay, if the average person's living 75 years and they get 2 extra years on top of that, that's statistically significant. What is that, like 3.5% or something like that? That's good. I'll take it. We'll take it.
Well, but you're talking about people who are eating real chocolate, not sugar-laden milk chocolate. You're talking about dark cacao, organic, not sprayed, nothing, no crap in it. It's, like you said, 90% cacao. That's what you're talking about, right? Because I just want to make sure people don't listen to this and say, great, eat more chocolate. No, not, don't
Right.
eat more milk chocolate. Don't eat more
High
Hershey's.
fructose corn syrup
Yeah.
chocolate or any of the other nonsense. And you know, I'm a qualitarian. I think you are too. So I'm just going to assume that everybody out there, you want quality. And I think everybody is a qualitarian when they really think about it. They really want quality. So go for it. Get, you know, spend the extra. I spend the extra dollar to, you know, get the chocolates made by people I know that I think is the best ever. And, you know, that's, you know, it's $1. It's like, okay, it's not that big a deal. And so, you know, where I try to penny pinch is when I'm paying the government, where I try.
Right, exactly. But I, you know, again, with the two different kinds of audiences, I know that people are searching you and they're finding this on YouTube, and I don't know them, but I do know my audience. And while I can't assume every single one is a qualitarian, I do want to make sure we say that so someone can't say, "Hey, JJ and David said eat more of chocolate." It's like, yeah, not chocolate with high fructose corn syrup, and it's milk chocolate, and it's a very low percentage of cacao, and it's not organic, and it's been sprayed, and it's been in molds that have gluten in them and whatever. So we're looking at because I know a lot of people don't love dark chocolate. Now I have a recipe, everyone, on here somewhere on YouTube if you're here, and it was on the original Fit to Love show, and I was making with Jeannie Peters dark chocolate peanut butter cups, low sugar, high protein, with almost 100% dark chocolate, and using a little stevia to sweeten it, along with some peanut butter, and using a little bit of a protein powder to up the protein in there, also to make it not so gooey. And you have a mold. Anyway, super easy, super healthy, and fun to do. But let's talk about the sweeteners if someone's not going to make it. And I'll take chocolates that I buy, but I don't love them as they are, and I'll make chocolate bark. And I didn't do that video yet, but you know, making chocolate bark where you melt it down, you put in some other superfoods, maybe some pumpkin seeds or some cranberries or wild blueberries, a few of those, and a little cinnamon, a little vanilla, a little stevia, and then you put in the refrigerator, and then you make it into bark. And again, to me, that's much more satisfying than what I'm going to get in the grocery store most of the time, because they're not going to do it the way I do it. And they're not going to put some of the things in. You may put almonds and different nuts or whatever you want to put in it. But when people are looking for, again, that best quality chocolate. And again, I remember back in 2007, weren't you selling chocolate? Or are you still? Don't you have your own chocolate?
Yes, actually. And so we moved our operation from California to Houston. And so we're still in the process of resetting up in Houston, but we just did a limited release of our chocolate. It's still out there, it started on Valentine's Day. And so we just did a limited release of the chocolate, but we'll get up and running in Houston relatively soon. I've been in the chocolate. I'm actually one of the only people, because, you know, out of all these superfoods, there's certain ones that I'm in love with and that I really wanted to get into growing. And one of them is the chocolate tree. And I have a farm in Hawaii. And so I've been there, 17 years or something, a long time. And so we have I've got like 300 cacao trees. And
I was just in Hawaii. I was just in Hawaii like 2 weeks ago for my birthday in Kauai, and we were sitting under cacao trees. Doug's like, what is that? I'm like, it's a cacao. He's like, wow, that's a really big bean, like right there, like growing on that tree. So where are your trees in Hawaii?
So I've got a farm on the Big Island, and I've been there actually 20 years, and also on Kauai. And so we have a good production of cacao. And just so everyone knows, when you look it up and you're like, okay, what does this tree look like? It's not really a giant tree. It's usually kind of a smaller tree. Maybe it gets as high as maybe 3 meters, 4 meters max. Usually smaller than that. And then it produces these Nerf football type of fruits. And on the inside of that is like 30, 40, 50 cacao nuts or beans. We call them beans. It's not a bean. It has nothing to do with a bean. It's a nut. It's the most widely eaten nut in the world that nobody actually eats. We all eat processed forms of it. So when I get people back to the original, what I like to do is get them to the original cacao beans or cacao nibs, which are the broken up pieces of the nut. So imagine an almond with 10 times more nutrition. That's what a cacao bean is. And then you take that and you throw it in a blender with coconut water and lucuma, because you were asking about non-glycemic sweeteners or low glycemic sweeteners. My favorite of all time is lucuma, Lucuma. And that to me is like the ultimate emulsifier. It's going to bring fats and oils and sugars together in a smooth way. So for example, like in South America, if I'm in Peru, every ice cream has lucuma in it, because it's the best emulsifier ever. And I just love the flavor of lucuma, which is a fruit, by the way. And so that's the one I would pick. Stevia is another one. So another one, by the way, that comes from South America. And other ones are like monk fruit that comes from Asia. And there's all, you just have to pick the ones that you like if you don't like all the sugar. I'm a beekeeper too. So honey and the products that come out of a hive, honey, bee pollen, propolis, those are all superfoods. you can't just suddenly, if you have candida or, sugar problems, you can't just suddenly just start drinking honey. That's not a smart idea. But if you can handle some amount of sugar, don't eat the sugar, eat honey instead, right?
Yeah.
I don't eat sugar ever. Forget it. It's going to be honey. And if it's going to be honey, it's going to be quality. So that's another one that I would recommend as a sweetener. It's like, hey, you don't need to add sugar. You don't have to add like even coconut sugar or granulated sugar or brown sugar. Honey, that's the original.
Yeah, did like 4 shows on honey, propolis, and bee pollen, and yeah, I did all that with Joyce Dales, who owns Cold Be Gone, and that was great. Now, lucuma is probably the only sugar I don't have. I have allulose, monk fruit, stevia. I have all the sugars, erythritol. I have all of them, but I don't have lucuma. So, is it a low calorie sweetener, a low glycemic?
It's a low glycemic, low calorie. Now, the thing about lucuma is that immediately it's going to become your favorite, and then you're going to be hiding it from everybody. That's what I've noticed that all over the world. Everywhere I've been to somebody's house, I'd be like, hey, where's your lucuma? And they're, oh, we don't have it. We ate it all. I was like, oh yeah, huh? So I'm in the kitchen, they're in the other room, right? I'm like, let me just climb up here, and then there's the old toaster on the top shelf in a cabinet. I move that, and the lucuma's behind it. That's how good it is. People will hide it.
Do you sell that too?
I sell lucuma. Yeah, I was, I think, the very first person to put lucuma on the internet. But when you're in Peru, lucuma is, there's whole valleys that are called like Lucbamba, which is the Lucuma Valley. It's like that, it's a huge, to me, it's a love affair. I grow lucumas also because they're so interesting. They're kind of like, the lucumas that we're familiar with here further north out of Peru they're more like, we call them egg fruits, and they have a hard-boiled egg consistency. Like they're kind of flaky and cakey when you cut into them. And if you bite into them, it's a love affair. I don't know how else to describe it. But the products that you're going to find are going to be powdered. So they're going to take that material and they're going to dry it and powder it, and then it's just easy to shovel it into a blender. Which is, again, my nutrition strategy: 1 blended drink a day at least.
Okay.
Skip your meal, drink it instead.
Well, I'm going to be buying some lucuma because it's like the only one I think I don't have. I definitely love honey, and I buy local honey from organic farmers here in Ojai. And I do use it, and I do bake with it and cook with it. So we would like to, all right, so let's cap on the chocolate conversation because you have it, and I want everybody to go to davidwolf.com. I believe you still get 10% off if you use the code JJ. If you want to buy David chocolate, we'll talk more about that. I'm going to be getting some chocolate as well because you had it then. Now, did you change anything about what you did from 2007 until now with your chocolate?
You cannot even imagine what you learn in all that time. It's 15 years, right?
Yeah.
It's incredible. So we improved and we improved and we improved. But also, it's not just that. I'm a farmer. So my knowledge of growing cacao is tremendously different than back in the day. And so I would say that I'm a rare bird in the world. I'm a soil to bar guy, but I'm probably the only soil to bar guy in America. There's soil to bar guys that you've run into in Ecuador or Peru or Venezuela or West Africa or something. But I'm one of the few in America, maybe the only one. So meaning that I grow it and process it all the way to chocolate on our farm. It's it's a one-stop shop. And that's a real learning curve to that. And it's a lot of fun.
Well, it's a passion project.
Food is about fun, and superfoods are about fun. And a lot of times, people get into food troubles, or they don't want to eat food, or they get into disturbances of their diet and digestion because they don't like food. And I get that because it's not that fun.
Well, in my first book, whatever, that's a debatable thing. I have 2 books all at the same time. But anyway, Fit to Love, I created in the 5-step process. One of the things the chapter was about food as a love affair. And what I've seen, back in the personal training days and weight loss until now, that it is a disconnection. People are disconnected from food. And if they're not growing it, you don't have to grow it, but most of us and most people have a very dysfunctional relationship with food, and it becomes food as repression or food as pleasure only, which food should be pleasure. But because of I think the way our nervous system is set up and how we're using it and the state of our body at the time that we're consuming, we're not in a state to actually enjoy it and be with it, but, grabbing your food and cooking it. And so what I was talking about, if you can't, it'd be best if you can grow it, chop it, cook it, eat it, because by the time you get to the eating part, you eat a whole lot less and you're satisfied on a different level because neurologically you've been sort of, your system has been calmed down and now you have a relationship. It's almost like earthing, right? Instead of sitting on the earth, you're now working with it with your hands. That's still a transfer of energy that happens there. So Food as a Love Affair was one of my favorite chapters because I just see so many people who, I had a workshop once for the book and a lot of people who overeat, women, and I took them through, I had sponsored the event with a couple different companies here in California, and I went through the menu. So we stood over the food, besides blessing it, we went through all the different ingredients and I asked them, this was what a great thing. And I would recommend anyone who wants to change your relationship with food to do this with your children, with your spouse. When you look at what you're going to eat, I went through each item on the menu and what it contained and asked, what does it do for you? What is it good? How does it affect the body? What are the benefits? Are there any negative side effects of this food? And A, it shows you how much you don't know about food. And then two, once you get to eat the food, there's a different relationship with it because now you've actually created this energy and you enjoy and you savor a little bit more. And so I love that idea. When it comes to looking at food as medicine, food can also be better medicine to you too, if you actually take that sort of spiritual approach. So I love that you're doing, you in the farm, I'm growing stuff. There's such a different relationship. I can't even explain it to people who overeat. When I cook for somebody, Thanksgiving, by the time I'm done cooking, I don't even want to eat. I'm full. Why? Because I've been working with the food all day. My body feels like I've already been eating. I don't have this like ravenous need to just stuff my face, and I'm not even really enjoying the bites, and my brain isn't sending the right signals to my body to tell me when I'm full when you're getting like that. So I think if you can, from this conversation, be inspired to also just start to cook more, start to go out and buy a tower garden if you don't have any room, grow something. There's a different relationship with food when you have that intimate relationship with it, with your hands, with watching it, and then it becomes just a sacred. I think it's like a very sacred relationship. So I want to talk about, as people are listening to this and they're thinking about superfoods in general, and like, how do they start picking what is right for them? What would you recommend? Because people who want to add things into their routine to become healthier, and here are all my choices, and they go, I don't know where to start. Do I do them all? So what would your recommendation be on where to start, and what kind of questions can we ask ourselves to choose the right thing?
Okay, great. I think the first thing you want to ask yourself is like, what climate are you in? Where are you? And also ethnically, where are you? So for example, I'm Mediterranean. So I do really good with Mediterranean food. I mean, it's ridiculous. Like olives, I could live on olives. I just absolutely am in love with olives. And so you need to ask that question. It's like, where are you ethnically? Where do you live? What's your latitude? And then you select the superfood that's the most appropriate for that environment. So for example, it's like you're in Ojai. I tell you a really good superfood for Ojai, aloe vera. It's easy to maintain, it's easy to grow, and you go out there and you basically peel a leaf out and you fillet it. So you're going to get the gel out, and you throw that into orange juice, throw that into a soup, throw that into a pot of tea, throw that anywhere. It's amazing what happens when you blend it into something. It disappears. You don't taste anything, but all the aloe, the magic is there. And that's a beautiful thing. So you ask yourself that, and you might be like, well, I live in New York, but I really like chocolate. Okay, then you might want to go that direction and deconstruct chocolate, bring it from chocolate bars back to cacao beans, and really like get cacao beans and be like, what is this? Let me check this out. Let me look at this. Let me get that visceral experience. I love what you're saying about the farming and the gardening. And I do want to add this in because I've noticed this over the years. People can get discouraged because all of a sudden they're like, okay, you're going to grow carrots now. And they're not a carrot grower. I'm not a carrot grower. I'm terrible at growing carrots. I'm not that guy. I'm a tree grower. I'm not also, there's people who are amazing at growing bacteria. It's unbelievable. They can grow kombuchas, juns, all kinds of interesting things like that, sauerkrauts, create apple cider vinegar. They're epic at that, but they don't know that because they never tried and they didn't realize that that's a skill that they have. So the whole breadth of investigating the magic of growth, from bacteria and cultures all the way to sprouts. A friend of mine is a sprout maniac. That's his favorite thing ever of all time. He didn't know that when he got started. He was a New York City entrepreneur. He had no idea that sprouts was going to be his thing. But over time, he tested it out. Some people, they're really good at herbs on the balcony. They're epic at that. You know what I mean? And so you just have to find out what your thing is. But I bet you have a thing and you don't know it. And that's a beautiful discovery. Now, as you get into the superfoods, you start going, okay, I can grow this on my porch, or I can grow this in my garden. Well, I want something that's really got the oomph. And that's where the spirulinas and the chlorellas come in. It's got, this stuff is dense, with like wheatgrass is I can't remember what the chlorophyll content is off the top of my head, but it's something like, I want to say it's like 12% or something like that. And when you get to spirulina, it's 3 to 6 times higher. I mean, that's significant. So when I'm thinking about like, what do I want to store and like have, just in case, we have problem supply chain or whatever, what am I going to store? I'll tell you what I'm storing: spirulina, chlorella. That stuff will last years and they're appropriately vacuum packed. And that's kind of an idea about superfoods. What am I storing? I'm storing cacao beans. I'm freeze drying them and then vacuum packing them. And I have them stored, this is when I'm out of Hawaii. When I'm in Hawaii, there's no food. There's never going to be a food problem ever. But you get what I'm saying. It's like superfoods are really, really valuable because they're dense. And again, just to give that analogy, it's about like with one cacao bean, it's about 10 times the nutrition of one almond. Same size, same look, almost look exactly the same, but that's the difference.
Let's do and I know there's more than maybe you can tell me right now, but can we just sort of go through, okay, we've mentioned cacao and goji and aloe vera and spirulina and chlorella. How about another 5 to 10? Like we've heard, people hear like, are blueberries a superfood? Is salmon a superfood? Like, right. We're talking about these very specific plants per region, yet we've also been told that there are certain superfoods within our normal diet.
If I was like salal berries from the Pacific Northwest, which are they're related to blueberries. They kind of grow in like a giant blueberry style bush. I would count that as a superfood. Blueberries are like they're right on the edge. I love blueberries. I'm a blueberry grower too. I love blueberries. I'm a fanatic. But would I count them as a superfood? No. And one of the reasons why is because they don't dry out very well. You can't store them. They're not versatile enough once you've picked them. So if you don't have a refrigeration or freezing system, blueberries aren't going to make it. You can't dehydrate them. I don't know if you've ever tried. It's really difficult. So they're difficult to store. Whereas, like, let's say a goji berry, you can freeze it, you can dry it, you can eat it fresh right there on the spot. You can store it for 10 years, break them out. You can survive on it. The seeds will still be viable. I mean, it's the adaptogenic quality of a goji berry is insane and magical. And, when I talk about goji berries, just to give you a perspective on this, there are 7 indigenous goji berries to the Arizona desert. And, there's 15 indigenous to North America. Now there's like 85 indigenous to like China and Mongolia and Tibet, and that region, of which several have been domesticated and used heavily by humans for thousands of years. So when I see goji berries growing in Peru, which I do, and they're there, that part of it is just, let me just get into this for a second. These plants, that we call a goji berry, or we call a cacao, or that we call a spirulina, or that we call a hemp seed, they are not just like one thing. They have relatives all over the world. And once you tune into the family, so let me give you a little download on, this is my spiel on, there's only really 350 plants in the world. And, when we look at, we're like, oh my God, Linnaeus categorized millions. I mean, what are you talking about? There's only 350. Well, how can you say that? Well, there's only 350 families. And once you know the character and personality of the family, you see it everywhere. And you go, oh, that's the goji berry of the region. Oh, that's the tobacco of the region. Oh, this is the hemp of the region, which, for example, in Mexico is going to be chia seed. That's their big seed. That's the superfood in Mexico, chia seed, because it's so darn versatile. It's crazy versatile. And so you start to see that, that it's like an energetic vacuum. Let me give you another example. In Hawaii, we grow mucuna, which is a vine, and we grow vanilla, by the way, too. And we grow vanilla, mucuna, and cacao together, which have been grown together. It's estimated and believed that those have been grown together for at least 5,000 years. Mucuna takes up the energetic vacuum of a viney, nitrogen-fixing plant that produces, beans. Now, many of those that could fill that vacuum in nature are not edible. So I don't want those. I want the one that's like most edible, and that's mucuna. And so once you start growing mucuna, the mucuna drives off its competitors that do the same thing that it does for the ecosystem. Does that make sense?
Yeah. What would mucuna, is it in something we would know, or is it specifically like you can only find it called mucuna, or does it end up becoming something else?
Mucuna is the number one Parkinson's drug in the world. It's if you take a supplement, and the pharmaceutical and nutrition industry does this, they standardize it to 15% L-DOPA. That's the best thing ever that's been found for Parkinson's in the world of anything yet. Maybe something will come later. So mucuna is very, very interesting chemically and very interesting in its effect on the brain. Now, let's say I was living in Peru and I was like, well, we don't have mucuna here. So then I grow fava beans, which are energetically do the same thing. Fava beans are a nitrogen fixer. They're not a vine, but they are really good at developing those interesting chemicals like L-dopa. By the way, for somebody with Parkinson's, those are great things. Mucuna and fava beans are really powerful in that situation. And this brings us back. There's always a medicine in nature, right, Nate? Like pharmaceutical companies just don't dream stuff up. They go to nature to find things that usually they get a hot tip from a shaman or medicine man, and then they go investigate. And they bring those plants back and they strip them down. It's not just random. And so we have to kind of get back to the origins of human diet and medicine. When you do that, again, superfoods are right smack dab in the middle.
What about the heating component? You had talked about, for me, aloe vera being here in Ohio and being able to grow it and stuff. And then mentioning, now, of course, a smoothie, like I've had aloe vera in a drink, in a cold drink, but what happens if I put it in a soup and it's a hot soup? Does it destroy the properties? Does it change anything about it when I heat up aloe vera?
Great question. I mean, the magnesium's still going to be there. The chlorophyll is still going to be there. There's going to be a lot of nutrients still there. So no, the answer is it's still going to be incredibly nutritious. Well, is it more nutritious raw? Yeah, sure. But if you made a soup out of it, but now I've had spirulina soup. It's terrible. So
I'm not making spirulina soup, but I make enough soups that I've never thought about putting aloe vera in it, and I put bone broth in it, so I don't know why I wouldn't put spirulina or why I wouldn't put aloe vera in it. Like any recipe that calls for regular broth, I don't use regular broth anymore. I use high mineral broth instead, something that has more oomph to it because I am paleo and keto, so not so I do eat animal products, but again, adding in aloe. Hey, why not? Because it's in soup, especially in my vegetable soups. That would be, and it doesn't really have a very strong flavor at all. I know I've noticed, and I definitely, smart. And I would recommend if any of you are listening to this and you go see, please don't go in the grocery store and you see a bottle of aloe vera and it's got pulp in it and it's really sweet. It's because there's a lot of sugar in it. So just please don't be drinking the aloe vera drinks at the grocery stores that have look at the label. If there's sugar in it, this is going to, you want to kind of use it in something or sweeten it yourself with something that's low glycemic. I want to go back to the chocolate conversation because again, that is a really good, everybody will eat chocolate. And if that's something someone can do to increase their superfood consumption and therefore immunity and antioxidants. And actually to back up before that, because we talked about the health of the cell. And I actually have one of Dr. Naish's doctors who we did talk a lot about cell health, but I want to do it right now here because I don't know when these two episodes are going to air together. But looking at, why would someone care? So if we're looking at cell membrane and inside the cell, can you explain to people, a little bit about that cell health and what the goal is, what's optimal cell health and the nutrients that create cell health?
So good. Now, the most important part of the cell, as Bruce Lipton has taught us, is the membrane, which is the brain. Now, the interesting properties of that particular membrane is that that's where the minerals are. So the potassium salt pump, right? So potassium and salt, or potassium and sodium, that's a pump, right? Where if you have too much potassium on one side, then you're going to want to move the salt over to this side to neutralize it being too deficient on the one side than the other. Right, that's diffusion. So that's how things move in and out of cells. So where do you get quality salts from plants? Right, that's a strong consideration at the beginning of membrane. Now you're thinking, how does this relate to our brain? Let me tell you something. If you don't have enough electrolytes, your brain does not work. And when we say electrolytes, we're really just saying salts. That's really what it means. And when you have a salt that's bound into plant material, like celery, for example, that's a great example of that. Then you're really getting what that cell needs to be healthy to respire correctly. When we add layers on it, let's just say we go to lycopene. So goji berry, super high in lycopene. The lycopene, this is such an amazing study. And I literally wrote a book on this. I have never published it. I've been too busy with other things. I think you know what my social media has been like. So I've been busy with that. But the lycopene and the way it breaks down and then gets absorbed by the cell and the way it gets into the membrane is that's an incredible story. And it's actually immunological too. So we did a lot of research when I was with Nutribullet. I'm still with Nutribullet. And one of the things we found out is that you could actually take something like a goji berry or a tomato or watermelon, all rich in lycopene. That's that red pigment. And especially if you blend it with something that's warm or hot, like a liquid or tea or something like that, or a broth, the lycopene can be drawn out and made highly bioavailable. And when you ingest that, that literally is at your cell membrane within 2 hours. And on the way, it's a blood purifier and an immunological substance. Lycopene normally isn't any of those things, but the way you deliver it, especially if you do it a lot, it can have effects on all of those things. Just think about that for a second. So if you eat a tomato, very likely it's not going to do all that. But if you do a soup with lots of tomatoes in it and goji berries and other things rich in lycopene, I'm thinking of gac fruit that they use in Vietnam, which is this crazy gourd that's just, it's like 40 times more lycopene than a tomato and 20 times more than a goji berry. It's like that kind of thing. And they cook that into everything with the oil. That was another piece of that, by the way. If you make that soup and you have a little bit of olive oil in there, that olive oil picks up that lycopene and delivers it to the cell membrane. That's all been worked out in the literature. That was one of my favorite things I ever discovered in the research on color pigments. That's just one carotenoid, which is lycopene. There are 750 pigments in that family. For example, beta carotene, that's another one. Lutein, that's another one. Alpha carotene, that's another one. And that list is voluminous and it goes on. What if you never had those pigments? I mean, people go years without eating vegetables, and you can tell. You can see it in it has to do with the development of the full, what's the phenotype, right? Your full phenotype, your full genetics start to get expressed because you're actually getting nourishment, not only in your digestive tract, but all the way to the cell. What are those? Color pigments like carotenoids, other pigments, anthocyanins. Let me tell you this. So we found out, in order to get enough of those anthocyanins to the cell membrane, okay, not just into your body, but to the cell membrane, that's a tricky thing because you have to eat a lot. So, I'm a complete berry maniac. So when it's berry season, I eat 3 meals a day of berries. And that will be enough. But let's say you're like, look, I can't eat all that, or I just want blueberries on my lunch or something. How do we maximize getting those berry anthocyanins, which are present in all of the fruity berries, from raspberries to blueberries to blackberries, those kinds of things. And blackberries are I'd say blackberries are a superfood, by the way. I'd say they're even one step up from blueberries. And I put aronia berries in the superfood category too, because they're actually a black colored berry. A scientist in Italy found, his name was Mazzia, Mazzia, that if you add a little bit of olive oil to your berries, you radically increase the absorption of those anthocyanins into the cell membrane, which means it's going to improve eyesight and brain health. You'll actually get a feeling that it's actually improving those things, when normally we don't necessarily feel that unless we eat lots and lots of them. I ate one time berries for like 2 or 3 days, and I was at an event. It was in Toronto. I was at a Hindu festival, and I remember, because black blueberries improve your eyesight. It was at night, and I remember I was looking for one of our guys in our crew, and he was like the guy who's always smoking dope, and he was never showing up, and he's that guy. And I remember seeing him across the festival, like, there he is in line over there. And it was the first time I'd ever noticed that blueberries had actually improved my eyesight, which is, again, you're going to have to do a little bit of work. You have to eat either a lot of blueberries or blueberries with a little bit of olive oil.
Well, the cell membranes are made from fat, right? So a fat right. So we could be doing olive oil, but you probably could do avocado. You could probably do, if you're using animal sources, doing something like
omega-3s.
Yeah. So fat, this is one of the reasons why fat is so important in our diet for everybody, because it creates your cell membranes and helps that communication. You're talking about lycopene, and one of the things that it's funny, I hadn't thought about that in a while, but when someone asks, because I'm very intentional, I don't know if you can tell that about me, but I'm very intentional. So whatever I do, there's a reason for it most of the time. And if you catch me on something I don't have a reason for, I'll be like, I don't know. I don't know. It's a habit. But normally it's very intentional. And for me, alcohol wise, like I drink red wine, and I'll drink champagne, but some of the polyphenols, I think it is in champagne, or what's the link to less Alzheimer's for champagne. And then with Bloody Marys, I'm like, the lycopene. So all the brain cells I'm killing with the vodka, I'll at least be contributing to a little bit with the lycopene. Anyway, that was my crazy, this is why I drink this drink with the tomato juice, because I don't normally drink tomato juice, but I'm guessing that goji berry has a much higher percentage or concentration of lycopene versus a tomato.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, good to know for those they're good to know for those that want to continue to build brain cells if you're also killing them in other ways also. So all right, I want to go into, because I'm sure people have a ton of questions that I'm not going to get answered on today's show. So let's go with that. We want to increase our superfood consumptions for their nutrient dense medicinal properties to help with mostly I'm hearing antioxidants, immunity, cell health, and cell health of course is everything. So we want, that's really important. And then choosing the kind of superfood we're going to focus on is maybe dependent on a little bit of our background, who we are. And I've got a Greek and Italian background. So that's that. Plus I'm living in Ojai. So we have like conditionally, I'm in this desert area here, and it's not, we're just going to try to get them in. So choosing from chocolate and goji and aloe and spirulina and blackberries and all these different kinds of berries and the okay, and a smoothie. So you want people to do smoothies. Can you give us a different, and I know you have recipes on your blog, so of course go to davidwolf.com, and he has recipes for all kinds of things and works with NutriBullet. So if you don't have something to blend it in, you can also check that out too. So let's talk about what your top, a couple different variations of a smoothie recommendation would be for you. And, and looking at someone who might be doing intermittent fasting or more kinds of fasting, like when in the day might they want to do that smoothie on an empty stomach, not an empty stomach? And, what are some of your favorite recipes? Just, maybe one or two.
Okay, great. So lifestyle wise, and by the way, I went back and I checked your code for your people for 10% discount off of anything on my website is alive, which is just JJ. You can put it in your show notes, or anybody listening right now, you get a 10% discount for being on the show. Anyway, so when I think about like diet and lifestyle for me personally, basically at my age, I'm in my 50s, I've got to be, I can't be eating breakfast. It just doesn't work. I have to just be drinking water in the morning. And so I'll take water and charcoal or, something, some interesting supplement or something, magnesium, for example, in the morning, and just try to skate as long as I can before I have anything, for lunch. And what lunch becomes is like, okay, let's blend something up. Because I know that if I eat a meal, then it's going to be heavy. And then 3 o'clock, I'm going to be like this. And I've had enough life experience that's where it's going to go to. So that's where the blending comes in. And you may change it up. You may say, look, I'm 20 years old. I want to, blend first thing in the morning. And that's fine. I used to do that when I was 20. And it's just up to you and your lifestyle. Sometimes people like to have a big lunch and then in the evening, like, what am I going to do? And I'm like, blend your dinner and, don't eat a dinner because it's just too much to have at the end of the day. It's going to show up as fat. Anyway, so what I like is the basic formula, which is coconut water, some type of berries, and some type of green vegetable. That's a good basic formula. Now, once you got that established in your blender and you get used to that, then you go, let me throw some superfoods in on top of that. Like, let me shovel, a tablespoon of hemp seeds in, or let me throw a little slab of aloe vera gel that I just filleted off of this leaf and throw that in there, see what happens. Let me see what the spirulina stuff's all about. Throw that in there. And that's where, or let me get this lucuma chocolate. I'll put berries, parsley, coconut water, lucuma, and a cacao beans, and just throw those in, see what happens, just blend it up. We found with NutriBullet, it's really interesting actually. The main reason why people wouldn't get a NutriBullet or wouldn't start into this is because it's such a shocking statement. They were afraid of making a mistake. That was the number one reason. Isn't that interesting? And so my whole thing was, especially when I was on TV with it all the time, I was like, look, let me just show you how easy it is. Just make easy. And that's just how easy it is. Once you get, you've been doing that for years, then you might go, okay, let me add like 4 or 5 superfoods to this smoothie, and, you complexify it from there. But you don't ever really need to do that. I mean, if you have spirulina once a day in your diet, that stuff is so insanely nutritious. I mean, let me just tell you this. Whenever you have that much chlorophyll, which spirulina is probably the highest chlorophyll substance in the world, maybe chlorella, they're on par with each other. You also have 4 carotenoids that back all of that chlorophyll. So let's say, over wheatgrass, you had literally, 6 times more chlorophyll. It's roughly about right. And it could even be more, by the way, in spirulina than you have in wheatgrass. You also have 6 times as many carotenoids, like lycopene and lutein and beta carotene and those things we talked about before. That's crazy. I mean, people don't get that kind of nutrient. You can't get that from supplements. It's just not possible. You can only get it from food. And that's why we say, hey, get it from Superfoods, because it's got it.
Yeah. Well, Corella is definitely a part of my regular weekly program. And I'd love to add back in charcoal. I know we talked about charcoal last time and your kohlrabi, right? Is that your charcoal that was sold out at the time. So I had to wait to get it. But it's funny because my cats do really well with it. And I put it in their wet food along with their probiotics every day. So they can, I need a carrier for their nutrition. And then they eat other really high-end cat food other than that. And they do well with it. And now, but some people, I know you said you have a really strong stomach. So in terms of like nothing really bothers you, but if I have, or if my partner has charcoal, then we'll get constipated. So what is for someone who wants to use it, because it is easy, it is safe, we talked about it. So the last show that we did was called water fasting. So if you haven't seen or heard that, if you're on YouTube, you can go back through the videos and see the water fasting episode that we talked a little bit more in depth about charcoal, but as a detoxifier. But what would your recommendation be for people who want to get the benefits of charcoal, but maybe they get constipated?
Great question. So charcoal, the activated charcoal we have today is not, I wouldn't call it a tonic substance. I would call it an amazing detoxifier, but a tonic substance is something you take every single day. You're always on it. Now, for me, I can take activated charcoal every day, but I have hearty digestion, but I can't say that to the general public, like, hey, this is a tonic substance. So what we worked out over the period of time is that, and this came from, it was a friend of mine he played professional baseball for 16 years. And he's like, it's just too strong for me. Can you give me something a little bit like toned down? And I was like, yeah, I can get you birch charcoal that's not activated. And that's way toned down. So it doesn't constipate you. Then that is a tonic substance. You can take birch charcoal every day of your life and never have a problem. And so, we have to go back to the origins of all this. Back in, let's just say we're in like Italy, way back when, it was all birch and willow charcoal. That was what was, when you needed something, you had an upset stomach, it was birch and willow charcoal. As we got into the 20th century, it was a Russian scientist figured out how to activate charcoal by burning off those last 10% of volatile organic compounds and proteins and things like sulfur, and eliminating that, and then standardizing the material. Because before then, charcoal wasn't standardized, right? So when you started having pharmaceutical companies and industries, they want a standardized product. We want this mesh size. We want the particle size to be between this and this. That's what gave birth to the activated charcoal revolution, which is a very strong detoxifier, but not a tonic for people who have sensitive digestion.
Okay. Do you have that one now?
I usually have it, but right now we are sold out of it.
Every time I talk to you, you're sold out of the one thing that I want. All right. I'll just get on the list. My goodness. All right. So davidwolf.com.
From the UK, and they're having a lot. I mean, we're having a lot of, I don't know, the supply chain thing is real. We're having a lot of trouble. I mean, I put that order in 3.5 months ago. We still haven't gotten it.
Damn. All right. So yeah, we need some of that. All right. A lot of good things. davidwolf.com, JJ code, get you 10% off. And of course, I would recommend the charcoal if you can handle the charcoal. I love the charcoal, but I have to sort of use either chlorella with it because that helps move things, or just space it out. My cats do great with it though. And it doesn't, in case you're wondering, if you put it in wet food for dogs and cats, they don't care. People look at things and they're black and they go, oh, cats don't have that. No, it still smells like food, still tastes like their regular food. They don't care. They eat it all. They're all good.
Let me just jump, because you're on this. This is so important. In terms of longevity in animals, there's nothing that has the track record of charcoal, just so everyone knows that. And so if you love your pets, you love your dogs and cats, the best thing you can do, and the simplest move you can do, is put a little bit of activated charcoal into their food. It can increase their lifespan by up to 40%, even more than that. Now that's significant. When I say 40%, I'm not talking about, remember we talked about 3.5%. That's a few years. We're talking about actually, if you increase their lifespan by 100%, that's doubling their lifespan. So 40% is significant. That's massive. Just a little, I just want to throw that in.
Yeah, well, I've been on it, and I'm gonna keep doing it because again, they eat it, they have no problem with it, everything's good, and they're pretty healthy. Although I have some things to keep fixing, but we'll get there. I've got one little problem child who had her retinas were detached from birth, So she doesn't really run or jump very much. She's getting a lot of exercise. She's kind of a little bit fluffier, if you will. She's because she loves to eat. She had a little trauma there, but we're going to work on that on an emotional level. But definitely love your animals, love your children. You can do it for your children. Stick it in a smoothie, right? So we're going to get everybody on.
Very safe for children. That's a very important thing. Now, a friend of mine had a premature child, and they were like, hey, they're going to give this child this formula here. Do you want to look at it? And I looked at it. It was a charcoal formula. I was like, you got to be kidding me, for a preemie baby. Just to backtrack, and this is in our other show, but just real quickly, charcoal is the most antitoxic substance we know of, and the simplest, and the most useful, and the most standardized for sure. Like, I'm into clay. Okay, clay. I'm into zeolites. Okay, cool, zeolites. But I don't trust any of that stuff nearly like charcoal. Not even close.
Yeah, everyone get some for everybody, and figure out how to get it into everybody's diet because it's easy and it doesn't really taste like anything. It's just the fact that it's black. If you're going to open up the capsule, and it will turn anything like a different color, but at the same time, it's so beneficial. And that's why I would like to get on a more regular regimen myself with it, because again, I just want to make sure that my digestion doesn't get stopped up by it, because I have a little bit more of a sensitive digestive tract than you. So again, we didn't even scratch the surface. There's so many superfoods. There's so much to do, but I'm pointing you in the right direction. So first and foremost, if you want to start with the simplest, easiest thing, as I will be doing, head over to davidwolf.com, JJ code for 10% off, and get yourself some chocolate and some lucuma. I'm definitely doing that right away. And then some charcoal, because not that charcoal is a superfood, but again, would it be considered a superfood? It's not really a food.
It's really interesting. It actually has no nutritional value. And by the way, we covered this in our last show, but it doesn't interfere with healthy digestion. That's important to understand. Like, it's not going to rob you of nutrients. That's a myth, and that has never been proven scientifically. It's interesting though, because if you really do the charcoal a long period of time, they found that it activates certain genetics. It's epigenetic, like Dr. Bruce Lipton tells us. It's not even a food. That's so interesting. It's so simple, like it's just charcoal, but how could it be epigenetic? But it is.
Awesome. So some things that are pretty standard that we've talked about, but get yourself some chocolate, get yourself some goji berry. So I had gone to a quick little story, like a acupuncturist who was, when I was back in LA, and she had like an open house, and she had her herbs, and they were all in alcohol for the delivery system, right? So your everything was a little bit more open to receive these nutrients, which I thought was really interesting. So I basically she had like vodka, and there was another berry. I forget what the berry was. It was a Chinese medicine berry along with goji berries.
Probably Shazandra. You think that was it?
No, it started with either a W or an M.
Okay.
It was a dark blue, maybe even black little berry that maybe looked like a peppercorn, maybe a little bit bigger than a peppercorn. And that she had that soaking with goji berries in vodka. And I'm like, man, I have a martini. I have a vodka martini and with goji berries and a kind of delivery system for, anyway, I'm not trying to give them a drink. I'm just saying that it was interesting. It tasted really good, and it was only needed a little bit of it. But the fact that it was in alcohol, just like, like your flower essences or some of the herbs that we get, they get put in alcohol because it's the delivery system to get into the body. And even your herbs like vanilla, you mentioned vanilla. So I was just in Kauai, and one of my friends and people who've been on the show, Theta Healer, and she prepared for me a vanilla paste that she had been fermenting for like 4 years, and it was like brandy or something. So I haven't even tasted it yet. I'm so excited to do it. But vanilla, right? Is vanilla a superfood?
I consider vanilla a superfood. I'm a vanilla grower, and so I'm a little bit biased, but the density of the nutrition in a little bean this big is absolutely insane. And so, we scrape them out, and we'll like eat just, 1/3 of 1/2. So 1/6 of the overall bean is a massive amount of vanilla to eat. That I'd consider a superfood.
Yeah, she grows them too. When we got there into Kauai, we went to her house, and she had them because she's got clients. So she does this for, and so she had this whole, she was drying out it smelled, the aroma was amazing. And then she has her own stash. And then so she just made me some, but yeah. And she told me a lot of chopping, like a lot of scraping, a lot of chopping with the vanilla beans. So, but that was really exciting. And I haven't even tried that yet, but anyway, talking about alcohol and delivery system. So again, a lot of different things to start with. And I guess the message would be just start with something. And then I think some of the intuition, and guess whoever you work with, again, nutritionally, like look at what you need and then what could help facilitate that kind of either healing or getting nutrients into your body to help you get to the next level of your health. And especially during a time like this. And what I mean by time like this is that a lot of you believe that your immune systems have failed you. And if that's the case, then there are natural ways, AKA these superfoods, that can help boost your immune system so that you are not that you're never going to be sick again, but you could be, again, elevate multiple times over your defense, your internal defense mechanisms that your own body can produce through these superfoods. Yes, David?
Yes, absolutely. It's just, the healthier you are, the better your chances are with everything, cancer, everything. So
Right.
we just got to be smart, and you put your best foot forward. It doesn't always work out, but it will work out long-term if you stay with it and keep advancing. You know what I mean? So like you could be hit by some flu, cold, COVID, whatever happens. But if you keep advancing your knowledge, you can more quickly respond. You can develop an immune response that you didn't have before. And that's more my specialty. I mean, that's what I really love teaching people about, because superfoods I've been doing for so long, and not that I still love it. I mean, I'm super into it, but after a while you got to talk about something else. And so that kind of stuff is, the herbalism has really got me like on the edge of my seat. And there's some really cool stuff there, but that's for another show.
Yeah, because I know you have some and I want to talk about them, but again, it was never going to happen all in one show. So let's come back and we did talk about a little bit last time on the water fasting episode, but let's get into the herbalism, because especially that's outside of the Chinese medicine model. Not that I'm saying that you're doing, but I know you're probably pulling from all different countries and plants all over the world. And it isn't just, you're not going to get some of these from your acupuncturist necessarily. So I'd love to do that. So hopefully you'll come back and we can talk about herbs for healing, maybe, or herbs for
longevity, and just all of it. It's the whole package. I mean, at this point, I get, again, when you're 20, you eat lots of food, and that's why we like to get like 20-year-olds into superfoods and that kind of stuff. But eventually, when you're in your 50s, it's really all about superfoods and the herbs. The food is like maybe one meal a day. Even then, I ate too much, and I'm having little amount of food. Like last night, I was just a little amount of food. I'm like, I'm not digesting. It's like that. Because the amount of food you need as you age just goes down. And so you want to go really after the punchy stuff. And again, that's where the superfoods come in, but the herbalism is really magical. But that, again, we'll cover later.
All right, he'll be back. All right, David, thank you so much for coming back again. DavidWolf.com. Check the show notes, JJ code for 10% off. Get your charcoal, get your goji berries, get your chocolate, and then let's meet up and talk about what you're doing. All right, thanks everybody. Thanks, David.
Thank you. Cheers.